Benjamin Watson. You're tuning into another 5-minute devotional, and I am super excited to bring this devotional to you today. We're going to be diving into Acts 27, and yes, we are taking a break from the Psalm series, but this is something that I just feel like that God is saying, Ben, you need to share this. I walked through my devotional, and this is what I got out of it, but also heard a sermon about this topic. And so I want to talk about courage and how our circumstances shouldn't be the thing that raises and lowers our courage, but our courage going into circumstances should be the thing that changes our circumstances. And so let's dive in to Acts 27 and talk about courage. Well, like I said, I want to talk about courage and how it correlates here in Acts 27. And so I'm going to try to read quickly because I know I don't have a ton of time, but I want to start in verse 10. If you know anything about Acts 27, Paul was promised by God that he would reach Rome. And so this is the moment in which he is embarking on his journey across the sea to Rome. In verse 10, Paul is trying to warn the men on the ship that they shouldn't go in which the way they're trying to go. And so he says, men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss. And so diving down 2 verses later, we see the storm. We see the thing that rises amongst them, the circumstance that could have been avoided. That could be a devotional in itself, the things that could be avoided. But in verse 13 we read, when a gentle south wind began to blow, they saw their opportunity, so they set sailed along the shore. Before very long, a wind called the northeaster swept down from the island. The ship was caught by the storm and could not head into the wind, so they gave way to it and were driven along. So the first moment where their courage maybe started to waver, their circumstance begins to get crazy. You have those, they rise. Maybe it's the beginning of a crazy season, the beginning of a busy week, and you maybe start to question. Instead of their courage kicking up and their faith kicking in, and they saying, God, take me through this. I know that you've given us, the promise that we're going to reach the land. They begin to wonder. They begin to question. And so as they pass a small island, they were hardly able to make the light boat secure. So the men hoisted it back up. They passed the ropes under the ship itself to hold it together. So imagine the boat, they run them around, tighten them tight just to try to bring everything together. They try to start changing the circumstances themselves, but not with much courage driving that. Then read, because they were afraid they would run aground on the sandbars, they lowered the sea anchor and let the ship be driven along. So what we see here is they lower the anchor to try to slow down what's going to happen. They've pretty much already come to terms that the thing that they don't want to happen is going to happen. Instead of having faith and praying and saying, God, lead us away, they just say, the inevitable is going to happen. Let's just slow it. Then in verse 18 we read, we took such a violent battering from the storm that the next day they began to throw cargo overboard. The thing that they were carrying, the purpose for their trip, they began to just throw away. Many of you are you're walking through a time of your life where you said, God, I'm going to embark on a journey. Maybe you're going overseas to be a missionary. When things get hard, you just start throwing the things away, throwing the opportunities away because the season gets hard. And so the purpose of that season has been voided, has been lost because you didn't have the courage and faith to continue on. Then it gets even worse. Then they started to throw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. So the thing that moves the ship, maybe it was powered by rowing, maybe it was sails, maybe it was whatever it was that needed to be used to function the vessel, to move forward. They began to throw out with their own hands. They gave up. It was a moment of honestly surrendering to the circumstance. And so then it says in verse 20, when neither the sun nor stars appeared for many days and the storm continued raging, we finally gave up all hope on being saved. And then we see this moment where Paul has courage. Everyone else doesn't. Have you had moments in your life when you were the Paul and you had the courage where you didn't let your circumstances determine your courage? Or have you had times where you were the people that you did let your circumstances determine your courage? I've been in both of those. I've been the Paul a lot less than I've been the other people. And so Paul says, men, you should have taken my advice not to sail from Crete. Then you would have spared yourself the damage and loss. But then he goes on to read, but I now urge you, to keep courage because not one of you will be lost, only the ship will be destroyed. And we see that there is this promise because we know that God promised Paul that he would reach Rome. And so not only was he spoken to from an angel in this moment, but Paul had the courage because of what God had told him in the past. And so I wrote just a little bit about this and kind of what I got out of it. And it says, courage is a demonstration of your faith. People then think their courage people then think that their courage rises and falls with circumstances. You have to be careful because you can turn into someone when their circumstances get worse, they lose all confidence. That's not what having faith is. Faith, remember, like I've said in the past, is not the absence of doubt, but is what pushes us through the doubt, the circumstances and the pain, into the provisions he has for us. And what we saw here was that they lost courage. They had only faith in themselves and in the circumstances around them. So I want to read just two things that I think we can do to keep our courage up, or to keep courage. The first thing is stop feeding your fears. Stop telling yourself you can't do it. Stop being your own God, is what I like to tell myself and my students. So the first one is stop feeding your fears. Secondly, stop focusing on the circumstance. Change your focus. Stop looking at the problems, because maybe you're going to miss. I just truly believe that if we focus on the problem too much, that we will miss the true reason why we're in that moment. We will pray so hard, God, give me a fruitful season. Show me the things you want to show me. And we're missing the point. We're missing just the reality that the circumstance we're in is what he's trying to show us. So stop focusing on the circumstance and focus on him. Focus on just keeping faith. Don't let your circumstances determine your courage, but have courage within your circumstances. And that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. I know it was a lot and it was intense, and I'm just excited about this, and I'm excited I'm going to bring part 2, hopefully in the next couple of days, about courage and keeping faith. And so remember, don't let your circumstances determine your courage and your faith, but let your courage determine your circumstance. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you can, please just take one moment and like this video. It pushes us up onto people's pages and also shows people the good news that we're trying to share here on the channel. So again, have an amazing day, and remember to not let your circumstances determine your courage.